resides in Brooklyn, New York. It's official. It's official. That's one thing we're going to get into. The other thing is going to be Carson Wentz being in Indianapolis Colts. We got some things to talk about in regards to that. And, of course, after watching Anthony Edwards with that nasty dunk over the weekend, what about the greatest dunks of all time? The greatest facials? What's your choice? I'll let you know mine. Max will have an opinion, too, for sure. You know that. First Takes in the house. Started a new week. Let's go. Where's my DJ?
Put that camera on me.
Can't believe what I just heard.
Are you good or bad at what you're doing? You're terrible. You're the worst.
Something is wrong with you.
This is the definition of player
Thursday, the best show on television.
Stop right there. He's the best.
Definitely co-sign that sentiment.
Thanks for tuning in to First Take.
Start the damn show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on a Monday. Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith. I'm Molly Karen Rose. Hope you all had a fabulous weekend. Gentlemen, we got plenty to talk about, or what? So let's dive right into it. We're starting in the association. BK, stand up. That's all I got to say. The Brooklyn Nets, fellas, taking down who? Oh, Kawhi and the Clippers. And who? LeBron and the Lakers. The Nets have the second best record in the East and the best record against teams above 500. Max, did the Nets prove to you that they are the best team in the association?
Not yet. No, they didn't. Now, they're going to be a problem. At the very least, the Nets are a problem. And without, once KD and Kyrie and James Harden and Joe Harris and all these guys are healthy and playing together, they're only going to get better. They're going to be a problem. But have they proved they're the best because they beat a Lakers team without AD? Because they beat a Clippers team where Paul George is on minute restrictions and James Harden gets away gets a call that he didn't deserve after a flop? No, they didn't prove that. Stephen A., I noticed you're not talking about the Knicks this morning, by the way. After all that talk last week, I noticed we're focusing on the Nets. Yes, the Nets are going to be the greatest offensive team of all time, if they're not already. By the end of this season, they will be, by not a little bit, the greatest offensive team of all time. But there's only one team in the NBA that is elite, especially when AD is there, on both ends of the floor. Elite, offense and defense, and that's the Lakers. The Lakers are the reigning and defending NBA champions. They basically went wire to wire last year. Gentlemen swept the West 4-1, 4-1, and didn't go even 7 games in the finals against a very plucky Heat team. That's this Lakers team. Did they get better or worse in the offseason? They got better. They got better in the offseason. The defending champions who never got extended last year's playoffs, who went wire to wire, got better in the offseason. Now, of course, all of this assumes AD's health. If AD is healthy, the Nets and the Lakers will be an epic finals. But I'm not ready to sit here today and say, yeah, it's the Nets. They should be favored. No, the defending champion Lakers, all roads to the championship go through the defending champion Lakers if AD is healthy.
Well, again, if AD is healthy, that's the caveat there. But I don't believe he's going to be 100% for the rest of the season. I think that eventually when he comes back, he's still not going to be 100%, and he's going to be playing relatively timid. He's going to have to watch his lateral movement. He's going to have to watch sharp cuts and things of that nature. He's not going to be himself. And that's the reason that I've got the Brooklyn Nets as the best team in basketball. You got to remember, they've won 5 straight. They've won 6 straight. Think about the road that they went through. They beat Golden State. They beat the Clippers twice. They've beaten the Los Angeles Lakers. When you look at this team right now and the way that they're flowing offensively, they are a juggernaut. Their defense has improved marginally at the very least. They're 12-4 against teams 500 or better, which is the best in the NBA. They've beaten every team in this league that matters. They've beaten Boston. They've beaten Indiana. They've beaten both LA teams. They've beaten Golden State. They've beaten everybody, okay? And that's with their roster being relatively sporadic, because whether Kevin Durant was there with Kyrie and no Harden, whether Harden was there with Kevin Durant but no Kyrie, whether Kyrie and Harden was there with no KD. The three of them haven't played but a few games together. It doesn't matter. When you look at them right now, even if Kyrie was out, Harden and KD could potentially win you a championship. I don't think Harden and Kyrie could do to win you the chip, but I think they could get you out of the East potentially the way that they're playing basketball right now. Harden's level of unselfishness can't be applauded enough. And watching Kyrie last night, let me tell you something right now. Kyrie's the best show in basketball. I'm talking about in terms of box office attraction, walking through the turnstiles to see a show. The things that this brother does with a basketball is absolutely sensational. And the level of unselfishness that he is showcasing, he deserves a lot of credit for that. Now, in the fourth quarter, he only shot 2 of 9 yesterday, 0 of 4 from three-point range. So there was a little hero ball going on, and we understand that that's something that can happen if they're going to win the chip. But I'm looking at the shots that he has set up for other people. He's been absolutely sensational. And defensively, they have stepped up. And again, the unselfishness with him and Harden getting the Joe Harrises, the Jeff Greens, the TLCs, and others involved, the Bruce Browns. I mean, they are distributing the basketball offensively in terms of Nash with Mike D'Antoni. We've seen a positive impact. There isn't a better team in basketball. And by the way, the one game they had against Utah this year, they beat Utah by 34. I'm just telling you right now, these brothers look absolutely, positively special. And I don't see anybody outside of a healthy Lakers squad with Anthony Davis standing in their way. And he better be 100%.
Well,
or even that ain't going to be enough.
Welcome to the Kyrie is the best show in basketball party. I've been saying he's the best show in basketball. But the difference is what you pointed out. They're winning. Kyrie has always been a great show. Even last year when things weren't great and you're like, well, at least Kyrie is putting on a show early.
That's not true.
What's that?
No, it was inconsistency, and Max, you're living proof of it because you spent more time, and Molly is an eyewitness to this. You spent more time talking about what a disruptive force Kyrie was than what a showstopper was.
That's why the more important thing. Look, the show is no doubt. He's spectacular. He's doing it in service.
I'm talking now, night in, night out. Now
he's been, but he's put up numbers to where you have to do it night in and night out, and he looks spectacular and wows the crowd, but. Really, teams have functioned worse too often with him. And the difference this year, and he's played on teams with good players, like once he left Cleveland, very good players. But those guys were not yet great in Boston.
There's no evidence of that
very
in
good.
Boston.
What evidence of what?
In terms of him, teams playing bad with him. The only evidence of that was Boston.
No, Cleveland until LeBron showed up was one of the most losing franchises in the NBA. I understand
he just got in the league. He was a rookie. He was the first 2 years of the league.
That's okay. They were still one of the worst teams in the NBA.
They got better each year he was there.
And on Brooklyn, the team did not function better with him than without him, and they were not a great team. That's the reality of Kyrie Irving. It's not the reality anymore. It's not the reality anymore. He's playing with other great players, not just other good players. And it's made a huge difference in his game because he trusts them differently, obviously. And because of that, you can point out Harden's unselfish play. That's true. Harden, since he's been in Brooklyn, has been as good as anyone in the league. But really, Kyrie remains the key in that way. Kyrie is the one. Is he going to play too much hero ball, et cetera, et cetera? He hasn't. Kyrie has figured it out with Harden, and they look amazing. And once KD comes back, they're going to be incredible. Who's the best player in the NBA? Still LeBron James. And AD has a case to be the second or top three, obviously top five. The Lakers, and the difference is the Lakers do it on both ends of the floor because AD came on this show last year and told us, I challenged LeBron. That's what, defensively, that's why LeBron, his defense is more similar to what it was in Miami than what it was in Cleveland since AD got to the team. And that two-way play on the Lakers makes them the favorites if everybody's healthy until further notice.
First of all, you're wrong. Kyrie Irving and the Cleveland Cavaliers got better each year that he was there. After LeBron left, he was a rookie, #1 overall pick. They got better each year that he was there before LeBron got there, and they went to the final. I'm saying they got better each year. He was a rookie, and they got better each of the 3 years that he was there before LeBron James arrived. That's #1. #2, make up your mind about Anthony Davis. #2, #3, #5. Which one is it? #2. Okay, that's the bottom line. #3.
Well, you could argue anywhere between 2 and 5.
When you look at what I'm saying, you can argue. Pick one. I got him top 3. All I'm saying is you said 2, 3, or 5. That's what I'm talking about, because we talk about Joel Embiid later. Let's not forget that in the show. Then we got a situation right now when you look at the Nets, and you're talking about D'Antoni, and you're talking about Nash, and you was talking about their defense, and I told you back then, I said, excuse me, Max, all they have to do is improve marginally. All they have to do is improve marginally on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're going to be unselfish. They're going to share the ball and watch how they look. This is what it is. And so now they're going up against teams. They're playing a complete game, even without one of their weapons, their best weapon, which is Kevin Durant, and they're smoking cats. I can't ignore that. The Brooklyn Nets are the best team in basketball right now.
The Brooklyn Nets are going to have the greatest offense of all time if they don't already. You got to prove you're the best team in basketball. There's only one way to do that.
We said the best team right now.
Okay.
Operative words
All right,
right
as far as
now.
This year.
Okay.
We're so chipper on a Monday morning.
Do we know if it's going to be allowed next
averaging
week?
over 120 points per game on their 6-game win streak. 5 of those games are on the road. Fellas, maybe the Boston Celtics missing Kyrie? Let's go there next. The Celtics blew a 24-point lead and fell to the Pelicans in OT 120-115. With the loss, Boston drops 15 on the season. They're now 7-10 on the road, and Brad Stevens is concerned, Stephen A., rightfully so. So tell me this, who do you think's most to blame for the Celtics' struggles?
Him and Danny Ainge. The fact of the matter is Danny Ainge, felt like he had the team in place. He didn't need to really go for it, go for the chip or whatever. There's no shame in trying to build a team around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but you did that, all right, and it's not panning out right now. And I have to look at Brad Stevens because, listen, I like Brad Stevens. I think that he's an exceptional basketball mind. I think that when he first arrived, he proved himself to be one of the young, innovative coaches in the game of basketball. He's a class act, class personified. I genuinely like him, and I genuinely respect him as a coach, and I think anybody who knows anything about basketball has to respect him. But in the end, when you have a star like Jason Tatum, and make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, that brother is a star. Jason Tatum is a star, and guess what? So is Jaylen Brown. The bottom line is you should be better than a 500 team. Now, of course, we got to look at Kemba Walker. He's got to play better. He hasn't been consistent. He's been injury prone. We get all of that. That's played the role. But in the end, he's got to play better. It's up to Brad Stevens to figure that out. And when I look at Brad Stevens, here's what I see. I see a guy that knows the game of basketball that can coach his butt off. My question is the motivational skills that he has available to him in his arsenal. Are you the kind of guy that can galvanize the troops and maximize the potential around you? Of course he's respected. Of course we look at him and know that he knows the game of basketball. He knows what the hell he's doing. But I'm talking about that leader of men that's able to peel something out of you that you might not even know is inside of yourself. The great coaches figured out a way to do that over the years. It would be Phil Jackson, the Zen master. It would be Pat Riley, the winner within. It would be Mr. Fix-It, the great Larry Brown, who doesn't get mentioned enough, who's a Hall of Famer. You know, the Chuck Daly's of the world, God rest his soul, and what he was able to do with the Detroit Pistons. The list goes on and on. The Greg Popovich's, of course, we can't forget to mention him. It's something about you as a coach where you shove aside the X's and O's because everybody knows what the other is doing, that's able to peel something out from inside of you and say, okay, I'm going to maximize the potential, even the potential you didn't know you have. That is the element I have not seen from Brad Stevens. And I think the Celtics have reached a point where now it's called upon to find out whether or not Brad Stevens has that little extra something in him to get that little extra something from his players, the players around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I have not seen that yet, and as a result, I think you're going to hear a lot of noise about Brad Stevens. If this stuff continues in Boston with these guys struggling, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about why have we raved about Brad Stevens so much. They're going to be asking that question, fair or unfair. You got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. This is the sport of basketball. You should not be a 500 team with two studs like that.
I don't think this is a Brad Stevens issue. You want to blame someone off the court, you can blame Danny Ainge. And Danny Ainge blamed himself a couple days ago. He talked about roster construction. He may have to make a move. I'm going to get to that in a second. You want to blame someone on the court, you can blame Kemba Walker. Because, look, he has a bad knee. Kemba has a bad knee. And he is known as a tough guy and a real leader. And so my sense is that a lot of guys probably wouldn't be playing if Kemba's playing like this as a result of the knee. But of course, he wants to play through. Look, the Celtics as constructed, they're a good team, and it's not that they're not a deep team. Like Robert Williams that's a find, you know. He can really long and he can play defense, and Tice is a good player, and they have good players. Marcus Smart, who's out right now, is a good player, but these are all essentially defensive players. When you look at the roster, it's not deep offensively. You have two excellent wings in Tatum and Brown, and you're right, Stephen, that's more than a lot of teams have. But a lot of other teams would have more depth in terms of various players who can score. Obviously not on that level, but who can go get you some points, go get you some buckets. The Celtics don't have that. They're really relying on Kemba to be that other guy offensively. And when he's not, where do the Celtics get the points from? It's hard. You know, like where do the Celtics get the points from if not Tatum and Brown? And it's not like Tatum and Brown aren't giving you the points. It's not like Brad Stevens isn't doing things to create opportunities for them and to kind of optimize, to maximize what they have. He is, and they are. They're great, and everyone knows it. But who else is there? It's supposed to be Kemba. If Kemba is right, we talk about big threes. That's a legit big three if Kemba's right. He has not been Kemba Walker. And when Kemba shoots like he does last night, you're not going to win. A couple games ago, then you might win, right? That's what it is. I can't look at Brad Stevens and say that's on him. I'll say I don't even like to say it's on Kemba because I think he's hurt. But if you want to blame someone who's actually playing, you can point to Kemba Walker. When he doesn't hit shots, very tough for them to win. You want to point to someone off the court, Danny Ainge.
Well, first of all, you can look at Kemba. Clearly, he's not 100% healthy. Just looking at his shots on the highlights alone, you see him leaning heavily and favoring his left leg heavily, trying to stay off that right leg. That's number one. But number two, and more importantly, let me tell you something. Your points would be valid if we're talking about championships. I get that. It's not valid because we're talking about a team that's at 500. They should not be a 500 team. They should not be giving up 24-point leads from the third quarter on. If you were good enough to be up 24 points, you should be good enough to hold on to the lead. Not that that's the kind of stuff doesn't happen in the NBA because we understand that it does. But there are too many occasions where we've looked at the Boston Celtics who have been in games, who have had leads, who have blown leads, who have just fallen apart. And we wonder what the hell is going on. And the reality is that that's Brad Stevens' job to fix it. When you got 30 teams in the NBA, this is a very big coveted job. A lot of people want opportunities to be a head coach in the NBA. And if you have a situation where you've got two studs like that, you got to know how to close. You got to know how to finish. Now, they've been to a couple of conference finals. We get that, and Brad Stevens can coach. Again, nobody is questioning his coaching ability. What we're saying is, in the end, the personnel that you have available, are you maximizing the potential of all those guys around Tatum and Brown? Because Tatum and Brown are going to be who they are. Who are the other dudes that are going to step up for you? What kind of system do you have? How are you utilizing the personnel that you have available to you, et cetera, et cetera? Anybody else we'd be asking that question about? Why does Brad Stevens get a pass in terms of asking those questions? That's the bottom line.
I wouldn't say he gets a pass. I think if you just analyze it, you have two guys you could look at to say, like, what's the Celtics? I'll be more specific, you know, in terms of your point. I think it's late game collapses, right? Because it happened again, and this time in a huge, obvious way. Another late game Celtics collapse. And we can look at defense, but really, it's the organizer of the offense. It's the guy who's making the decisions. Marcus Smart is out, and Kemba Walker's hurt. I think really that's what's happening as far as that goes.
Yeah, but they started off even before Marcus Smart got hurt. They started off the season. We didn't like what we were seeing from Boston at the very, very start of the season. And then we blamed the bubble. You know, we knew Kemba was out, but we blamed the bubble. And such a short, the season ends in September for them, and then they come back and they play in December. No, a whole bunch of other coaches don't get that excuse. Brad Stevens not going to get it either. And I respect him. I respect the hell out of him. You got to do it.
Boston ranking outside of the top 10 in both offense and defense right now. Last season, they were outside the top 10, and then right now they're not even in the top 10. And let me do this again. They're outside, of the top 10 right now. Last season, they were inside the top 5 in both. It's Monday. We'll get smoother as the show goes. Speaking of collapses, Carson Wentz, fellas, says farewell to Philly. Is it fair to call Wentz a bust with the Eagles? Paging Max Kellerman and the rookie Anthony Edwards looking like a vet. Posterizing. So when the new league year starts, Philly's former number 1 pick will be officially traded to Indianapolis. On Friday, Wentz bid farewell to the Eagles' former teammates in the city of Philadelphia. His IG farewell read in part, "What a journey to the city of Philly. Thank you." On the field, we brought the Lombardi Trophy home to Philly and hopefully brought a lot of joy to the city over the years. Thank you to the Eagles organization for drafting me and making my NFL dream come true. Max?
Yep.
We're going there. Is it fair to call Wentz a bust in Philly?
If you make me answer yes or no, the answer is yes. Yes, it is fair. Now, I was on the air last week saying, hey, he contributed to a Super Bowl win. I don't think Eagles fans would say, let's redo those years because it could take away the Super Bowl, and he put them in a position to win, right? He gave them a great record because he was great in 2017. That's the only time he was great. Don't believe what you heard. The rest of it's hype. The next year, he was not as good. And then last year, or 2019, he played them into the playoffs. No, he didn't. He was not good in the second half of the season. He was beating up on a pathetic division. And all the other quarterbacks in that division were rookies or backups. And they all did better against those same divisional opponents that Carson Wentz was barely beating by the skin of his teeth and kind of lucky, turning the ball over on 3rd down in the 4th quarter, and then the team would happen to recover it. He did worse than all those first-year quarterbacks and all those backup quarterbacks did against those same teams. No, he wasn't good in 2019. Stop it. And this is the truth. So because he was great that one year, you say, well, how could he be a bust? Well, the fact is he did get hurt toward the end of the season, and Nick Foles did take over, and I thought they were dead in the water. I like Nick Foles, but he's no Carson Wentz. But they caught fire and won the Super Bowl. And Foles won Super Bowl MVP against Tom Brady, who threw over 500 yards. He won Super Bowl MVP. And then the next year, whatever you want to say, well, the team was this and that. They were 5-6. They were under 500 and dead in the water when, once again, Wentz got hurt. Foles took over. They caught fire, made the playoffs, won a playoff game on the road against the Bears, who everyone thought, a lot of people thought might get to the NFC Championship game, and then almost beat the Saints. Wasn't Foles' fault, put the ball in the receiver's hands. So that's the truth of what happened with Wentz. He shockingly regressed from 2017, MVP caliber player, who nevertheless got hurt, never got there, into a player who lost his job this year. It was steadily downhill. And Stephen A., they gave him a huge contract. An elite quarterback contract, the kind of contract you give a player to make up for other deficiencies. And you know why there were other deficiencies, Stephen A.? What'd they trade him for? A 3rd and a conditional 2nd. Do you remember what they gave up to get him? I had to refresh my memory. I knew it was a lot, but oh my God. Guys, they gave up the 8th pick in that draft to move up to the 2nd pick, along with a 3rd rounder and 4th rounder, and a 1st rounder the next year, and a 2nd rounder the year after that. They put all that together to move up to draft Carson Wentz. The 8th, another 1st, a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 4th to get that guy, and then you paid him over $100 million? And he was so bad he lost his job, and even the one year he was great, another guy took over the team and won the Super Bowl, and the following year the team wasn't underperforming until the other guy took over? How could you not call that a bust?
Easily, because I know sports and I watch them. And I know a bust when I see one. And a bust is somebody that gets drafted and never shows you a damn thing. Let me give you an example, Max Kellerman, of a bust. Jamarcus Russell, that's a bust. Kwame Brown, that's a bust. Michael Olowokandi, that's a bust. Those are busts, Max. People who get drafted number 1 overall and never show up. That's a bust, Max Kellerman. Carson Wentz, after his first season going 7-9, they go 13-3. He guides them to an 11-2 record before tearing 2 ligaments in his knee. at the Coliseum here in Los Angeles, and Nick Foles took them the rest of the way and guided them to a Super Bowl. He was a leading candidate for league MVP honors. He comes back the next year. Yes, he wasn't fully healthy. Yes, the record was 5-6, but you still saw a bunch of cast-offs and cats that, you know what, you questioned whether or not what they could bring to the table. Actually, that was the year after. But I'm saying he wasn't fully 100% healthy, not even close to it. Not to mention the fact that the year that they went to the Super Bowl, we have to take into account what he was working with. Frank Reich was his offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach, essentially. All right? And then he departed. Now, if you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you got a guy that you moved up in the draft twice to draft number 2 overall. You draft him number 2 overall. You give him the keys to the city, the keys to the franchise. He's got the head coach in Doug Peterson. He's got the quarterback's coach, the offensive coordinator rather, in Frank Reich. What happens? He's considered the golden child. You pacify him. You do all of these things, just like when he was at North Dakota State and everybody was talking about he's the man and all of this other stuff. You even had elected officials speaking glowingly about him. It was crazy. Okay? This is the guy that he was. And then Frank Reich all of a sudden disappears once he departs, or when he goes to Indy, and Carson Wentz doesn't have that security blanket. He doesn't receive the same level of coaching. This is the indictment that I completely support you about, Max Kellerman. When Carson Wentz, even though Frank Reich was gone, Carson Wentz was led to believe he was the man, like most franchise quarterbacks are led to believe. He was pacified to such a degree. The fate that he had clearly was in Frank Reich. It was never in Doug Peterson. So him and Doug Peterson didn't see eye to eye. They didn't seem to be on the same page. What happens? He's audibling. He's not listening to the coaches. He doesn't believe in what they're trying to get him to do. He ends up holding on to the ball too much. He ends up getting sacked too much. You got individuals that he's playing with. You know, one was a damn third stringer. One was a practice player. Deshaun Jackson goes down. Nelson Aguilar at the time goes down. Alshon Jeffrey goes down. The list went on and on and on. So there was a lot of things working against him. And in the end, he ended up having a god-awful season this past year. But that's not a bust. A bust is somebody that reveals to you they never, ever, ever deserved to be picked where they were picked.
Look.
They shouldn't have been valued. They were straight garbage, and they don't deserve any kind of love. That's not Carson Wentz. He fell apart, but earlier on in his career, damn it, he had validated that high pick that he was.
He's not Jamarcus Russell. He's not Anthony Bennett. That's right. He's not Darko Milicic. That's right. He's not a bust along those lines.
Forgot about Darko Milicic. Yeah, right.
That's right. But
yeah, I forgot about that one.
But if you're talking boom or bust, I'm taking everything into account. It's stretching the definition a little bit. It is. But if you're asking me straight up, which is why I like the question, could you say that? I really can't say anything else, because you have to take into consideration the amount of resources invested in Carson Wentz. You're pointing out the reasons it went bad. And I thought it went bad earlier. You know, everyone else is pointing to 2019. He didn't have anything. I saw regression then. And even in 2018, he wasn't what he was in 2017. But Stephen A., if you spend, a guy's still 27 years old, right? If you spend, now he's 28. If you spend the 8th pick, another number 1, a number 2, a number 3, and a number 4, and then you spend $120 million, and what you get back is a guy that's so toxic that you have to, and so bad on the field and toxic otherwise to your culture, that you have to get rid of him for a 2nd and a 3rd? To me, that's a bust. Now, he did contribute in 2017. He did. But he was not on the field for any of those playoff games. In fact, he didn't have any playoff wins. That's the truth of the matter. So you put all that into a guy, both in draft capital and then in cash, and what you get are those returns that are so abysmal after one great year that wasn't even completed, that are so abysmal that you get rid of him for a tiny fraction and have to take a $30 million cap hit on top of it. To me, that's a bust.
I don't think it's a bust. And the reason why I don't think it's the bust is because I don't view it that way. I think about the basically insurmountable odds he had to overcome when he took them to a division title last year, despite what he was working with. I think I give him a lot of credit for that. You talk about you saw regression. That's not to be. I saw a guy bereft of talent. He didn't have much to work with, and he carried the Eagles to the division crown, and then got hurt in the damn first quarter of the playoff game against Seattle, for crying out loud, which was predictable because he could be injury prone. Last year was obviously god-awful. There is no excuse for that. But those first couple of years in the league, there's no question he was not a bust. He was not a bust at all. And when you talk about, investing in him, you got to invest in the talent around him, too, because no quarterback can be successful throwing to himself.
How can you? You gave up all the draft picks to get him.
They gave other people
That was
weapons.
for a hot minute. He took a total of 8 snaps, fellas. A total of 8 snaps in the playoffs in his 5-year career. I will leave you with that. When we come back here on First Take, we got to talk about Deion Sanders, the Hall of Famer, primetime, dealing with some drama after a historic win. You'll hear from Prime coming up in just a bit. Obviously, the fellas will react to that. And the rookie, Anthony Edwards, looking like a vet, posterizing. The fellas debate, is this the greatest dunk of all time? Stay here, First Take just getting started. State coaching debut on Sunday that his personal items were stolen from the coach's office during the Tigers' 53-0 victory over Edward Waters, leading to him to have mixed emotions about the day.
I'm pissed off right now because I have mixed emotions. We won, kids played really well. But while the game was going on, somebody came in and stole every darn thing I had in my locker room, in the coach's office. Yeah, credit cards, wallet, watches. Thank God I had on my necklaces. How? So how do you think it feels coming back after just teary-eyed because the guys have presented me with the game ball, one of the best moments I've ever had in my professional sports career emotionally, and then you go into your locker room, your coach's office, to digress, and you notice and you don't even have a phone to call your mama, to call your girl, to call your kids, because it's been stolen.
Following Sanders' news conference, the school told ESPN that his items were misplaced and found. But Sanders disputed that the items were misplaced in a series of tweets later Sunday, saying that his assistant walked in on a man in the process of committing the theft. And following Deion's tweet, the school said several items belonging to Coach Prime were taken from the locker room. Those items were quickly recovered and returned. Stephen A., what did you think of Deion's overall coaching debut?
Well, it was a spring football game. They won 53-0, if I remember correctly. So I'm happy about that. Knowing him the way that I do, we're friends, we're brothers. I know what coaching means to him. I know how passionate he is about it. And although I would have loved to have seen him get the job at Florida State, and I think Florida State made a mistake by not hiring their superstar, obviously he's an alum of Florida State. I'm very, very proud that this guy is associated with HBCUs, because y'all both know how near and dear HBCUs are to me, being a graduate of Winston-Salem State, which is an HBCU. Having said all of that, here's what I would say about his reaction to getting his items stolen. It's incredibly unfortunate. It's embarrassing to Jackson State. I feel terrible that happened to him. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to him about this yet. My immediate reaction is that I would have handled it differently, however. And the reason why I would have handled it differently is because the actions of a few, the criminal act, the unfortunate actions, the embarrassing actions, should not be a reflection on Jackson State. But that is how it may be inhaled and grasped and interpreted by those on the outside. HBCUs have incredible challenges, as you all know, that I've highlighted on many, many occasions, in terms of notoriety, cachet, interest, support, financial and otherwise. It is a challenge for historically black colleges and universities to receive those things. This does not help. It doesn't help when you go in front of the cameras on national television, although it's true, and although his emotions are totally, totally understandable. I'm not blaming him for anything. I'm simply saying that if it were me, I would have handled it differently. I wished he had handled it differently, because I think that people are going to use that as an excuse to sit up there and say, all right, now tell me why my child should go to Jackson State. And those are the way that, when people are against you and you are operating behind a proverbial 8 ball and you have those challenges coming up, unfortunately, that's how things are interpreted. So I wish he had handled it in-house in a more private manner rather than publicizing the fact that his stuff was stolen. That's my only thing.
I respect where you're coming from, Stephen A. I respectfully disagree in this case, and I say that knowing that this is very personal to you in a way that I cannot relate to because I did not go to an HBCU. Not African American, didn't go to an HBCU. So I realize how personal it is for you. And I say that to preface what I'm about to say.
Sure.
Think about what Deion Sanders said. He said, this was one of the best moments of my professional sports career. Deion Sanders. I know he's coaching college kids, but he's getting paid, right? Like the coach is a professional. Deion Sanders, to say that, one of the greatest athletes who ever lived. He was a fantastic baseball player. He used to play in the postseason. Deion Sanders, one of the greatest football players who ever lived. I mean, you know, like in terms of guys I saw with my own eyes, Lawrence Taylor and Deion Sanders, then talk to me about everybody else. Won Super Bowl, like he was the balance of power in the NFL. But going to an HBCU as a coach and being presented the game ball after winning in a blowout, they didn't have any blowout wins last year, meant more to him. So he's dealing with that. Let's start with that. He's so proud. He's so happy of this accomplishment. Here's the thing. You said HBCUs have a lot of challenges. And how are you supposed to sell this to kids? Hey, come to Jackson State if you know, Deion's putting them on blast. I say you're more likely to get to be the place that you can honestly sell because Deion Sanders is putting you on blast. And because Deion Sanders followed up with their little PR spin by saying, no, let me go into detail. I have someone who caught the crime in its mid-commission. They saw what was going on. No. It's not what the school is saying. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And Deion Sanders is saying, I'm bringing a different standard to this school right now, certainly to the football program. And no, we're not going to operate in the shadows if something bad happens. You want to win the PR battle? You're going to win the PR battle with the truth because we're going to take responsibility. Stephen A., I think that goes hand in hand with why Deion Sanders has been such a great athlete in his career and why he has a chance to be a great coach.
Well, I would say this to you. Before I move any further, let me clarify that that's their spring schedule. It wasn't some meaningless game. That's their spring schedule that they're in the midst of right now, which is why the game was what it was. But what I would say to you is this. I get where you're coming from. Light, sunlight is the best, disinfectant. I get all of that. There have been many times. Deion Sanders has always been an incredibly honest and straightforward dude, and that's why I love him as my brother. I love him dearly. There are times in his career where he will tell you that he was a bit too open, he was a bit too candid, he was a bit too honest, and that might not have been the way to go. So, in other words, that light or that sunlight being the greatest disinfectant, we can say that, but that's not necessarily always true. It doesn't mean that you lie. Again, we're not encouraging him or anybody else to lie and be deceiving. What we're saying is whether or not something needed to be publicized. And I'm saying for the purposes of what he's trying to build at an HBCU, it might not have been anybody associated with the program at all. I mean, I don't give a damn where you at. There's criminals everywhere. There's always somebody that's going to be a thief. There's always somebody that's going to engage in salacious or unethical behavior. I don't give a damn in any walk of life that you encounter. That's always going to be the case. But considering this is his first game and the moment and what it meant and what have you, I don't blame him one bit for his emotional reaction to it. All I'm saying is that I wish that part of it had not been publicized. I wish that would have been handled in-house because there's a lot of things that a lot of people with the wrong intentions can do with that. That's all I'm saying. I'm certainly not condemning him for anything. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, understand both sides. Obviously, he felt violated after pouring his heart and soul into that game. But here's the good part. We have him on Wednesday, and we'll talk to him about it on Wednesday when he joins us. We will leave it there, fellas. When we come back, we got to talk about the Lakers. It was not their weekend. They fell to the Heat and the Nets. Is it fair for LA to expect King? We're talking LeBron. And the rookie Anthony Edwards looking like a vet, posterizing. But the fellas are going to debate the greatest in-game dunks of all time. Some good tape. Don't miss that.
Time is something that we haven't had over the last year and a half, and now it's time for me to adjust again and see ways I can be even more effective to help this team win ball games, because that is the sport that we're in. We're in the winning business, and I've always been a winner. So it's time to click into that.
All right, Stephen A., obviously the Lakers are without Anthony Davis. We're just hearing from LeBron. Do you think it's fair to ask LeBron to do even more?
Well, to me, yeah. And what I mean by that is that do more scoring, run the offense. That's it. I don't think it is. I think it's necessary because the ball is in his hands. If he was a guy that was averaging 25 and 27 because you had a point guard and other leaders on the squad that were distributing you the basketball and your job was just to put up points, that would be different. But no, he's the point forward. He's the brains behind the operation. He's the ultimate, orchestrator. And because that's the reality of the situation with any team that LeBron James on, but specifically this Los Angeles Lakers team, I don't think it's unfair to ask him to do more. It's not implying that he's not doing enough. It's not implying that he hasn't done enough. It's simply implying that with the absence of Anthony Davis, things have to change, and they can't possibly change unless LeBron James facilitates that change, whether it be continuing to get more of the right people involved, or when to insert himself and get himself even more involved, when to define or decide whether you're going to be assertive and aggressive or whether you're going to be passive at particular moments in the game, in the flow of the game. LeBron has to be the one to make that decision because he's the only one capable of making that decisions at the right moments, at the right times, and manipulating the circumstances to his extreme advantage and that of the Los Angeles Lakers. Only he can do that. Nobody else is a better option to pull that off than LeBron James. And because of that reality is why I say that he has to, it's fair to ask him to step it up and to be more aggressive and what have you, because he's the orchestrator. He's the guy that pulls all the strings. That's all I mean by that. It's certainly not to imply that he hasn't done his part already.
I don't know what more LeBron James can do. I don't know what more we can expect from him. I mean, he's given you 26 more or less, 8 and 8 with a steal, shooting almost 37% from three, taking 7 threes a game, give or take. I'm just rounding up or down depending on, where the decimal point is there with those numbers. And he's also on a team that is elite defensively. Now, a lot of that has to do with AD, but as AD said, I mentioned it earlier in the show, Stephen A., he came on First Take last year and said, I challenged LeBron to perform at the defensive end when he got to the team. LeBron's been doing that too and has been leading a team that plays great defense and great offense. I don't know what else we could ask for him at the age of 36 in his millionth year in the league. Now, I'll say this. The danger in asking LeBron to do any more at his age, given the miles on him, because he's also playing 35 minutes a game, and he's not missing games, right? Remember at first when we weren't sure what was going on with AD, Stephen A., and you were critical, like, hey, if LeBron's playing, you're playing. I know that was before we understood the extent of the inflammation and or the Achilles tendinosis, right? Yep. But still, LeBron was playing, right? Second of back-to-backs on the road. LeBron's playing. He feels the responsibility not only to the Lakers but to the league. And he's playing on both ends of the floor. And he's playing given more minutes than anyone who's ever lived who's still this level of elite. Here's the disturbing thing. His efficiency numbers are the lowest they've been. His PER is the lowest it's been since his rookie year. Hasn't been this low since his rookie year. And at a certain point, there's a limit to what you can do physically. And obviously, they need LeBron to lead this team if they hope to win a championship this year, if they hope to go back-to-back. But so you want him to play offense, run the offense, of course, score more, play defense, lead. Also, he's figuring out in AD's absence, what can my team do, right? He finds Caruso in the corner, misses the shot. Caruso misses the shot. He's criticized. Well, why is LeBron passing the ball with the game? The guy was open, so he passed the ball, right? So he's also dealing with the most scrutiny, the most pressure, the most minutes into his career, anyone who's ever played like this before, on a defending championship team. I don't know what else he can do. It's not fair to ask for more from him. He's doing everything.
It is totally fair. And it's fair because he has the power and the ability to dictate what he can and cannot do in most situations. There's nothing wrong with demanding would be a problem because it implies he's not doing enough. But asking him if there's more that he could do, knowing that his greatness could peel something out of his hat, There's nothing wrong with asking him that, particularly with Dennis Schrader out as well. And so we've got to remember that. Your point guard is out. Rondo is no longer a part of the team. Anthony Davis is out, and you're the point forward to begin with. When the ball is in your hands, usually good things happen. You're able to keep them in the game because of the decision making. We've raved about the fact that he's a master at finding mismatches. That's what he does. He holds on to the ball, he creates and discovers mismatches, and he exploits them. This is what he does. Never is it more important with him in a Laker uniform to do it, now that Anthony Davis and Dennis Schrader are out. So I don't have a problem with asking of it. If you demand it, it's a problem. But if you ask, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, what I'm saying is, I agree, right? Like, hey, LeBron, is there anything more he could do? I think he's already, I think this one goes to 11, right? Like Spinal Tap. Does this one? It's already it's at the highest it can go. I don't know
you say.
What isn't he doing right now? He's on the ball a lot. He's defending. He's shooting the three.
I've watched
He's hooking
LeBron.
up teammates.
I've watched LeBron. There are times, Max, that, you know what, because Anthony Davis and others are on the floor, there was no need for him to be as aggressive and assertive as we've seen him be in the past. But now that Anthony Davis is going to be out and Dennis Schrader is out, you could see LeBron get a bit more aggressive offensively. Absolutely. There's always more he could do because he can pretty much do it all.
I mean, and then there's the obvious argument, which is if they want to make a deep playoff run, again, I know like he's done it before. He's turned it on like last year, and then he's been able to perform in the playoffs better than anyone else. But every year is uncharted territory for LeBron James because no one's ever done this before. I don't know if I am a Lakers fan. As a Lakers fan, I don't want to see LeBron going all out in the middle of the season because of an AD injury, and then eventually, especially as I mentioned, those underlying efficiency numbers are the lowest they've been since he's a rookie. I mean, it indicates maybe finally some aging. I don't want him to get with all those deep playoff runs. He's in the Western Conference Finals now, puts the pedal to the metal, and there's not enough gas in the tank. I think what he discovered in Cleveland was he can't do the Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra intensity on both ends of the floor all through the season and then win the championship every year. Pick his spots.
He knows how to pick his spots particularly. Well, you could say he's doing that now, but you might be asking him to do something a little bit more until Anthony Davis returns. And the thing that I marvel at as well is that, Dennis Schrader is out because of COVID-19 safety protocol measures, and we've had other players do that. You notice how LeBron hasn't missed a game because of that stuff? Somehow, some way, all of these guys, folks are missing games for a plethora of reasons. But the dude is 36 years of age in his 18th season, and he still is the most reliable dude, arguably, in the league. I think that people really need to look at that and then say to yourself, are you sure you can't ask him to do more? Somehow, some way, he's always figuring out a way to do more. So why not ask?
All right. We'll leave it there. We have an interesting one, guys, when we come back here. Cam Newton got into a little back and forth with a camp member. I cannot wait to hear Stephen A. and Max's reaction to that. We'll play the video for you. It's interesting, to say the least. Plus, after Anthony Edwards' viral dunk this weekend, the fellas will debate which is the greatest in-game dunk of all, into a back and forth over his impending free agency initiated by a teenage player turned heckler at a regional 7-on-7 football tournament Sunday. Cam posted a video of the conversation that followed.
Please don't be one-dimensional. Like you said something to me, then I go, I'm really trying to talk to you. I'm not trying to crack no jokes. I'm just really trying to ask a simple question. It's your fault why everybody's looking, but I'm really just trying to ask a question. But you never said what you did. You said you're going to see.
So there's that. Later on Sunday, the young man did apologize. Stephen A., what's your reaction to Cam's handling of that situation?
Well, I don't think that I appreciate the explanation that Cam came back and tried to provide to him. I don't think that he should have engaged in a back and forth with the kid at the start, because here's the reality of the situation. He's a kid, so I won't mention his name, although it's all over the web and social media and all of that stuff. But that kid should be ashamed of himself. If I was his parent, he would have been grounded. He would have been punished. I might have slapped him upside his head. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was a disgraceful display of behavior by that young kid. And let me put it in perspective for that young kid who was a linebacker and a wide receiver at his college at this particular moment. moment in time. I don't know whether he was 16 or 17 years of age. Cam Newton is an individual that has been in the National Football League for 10 years. He has played in 139 games, or 140. Outside of last season, where he was injured pretty much for all but 2 games, Cam Newton has missed a grand total of 6 games in 10 years. Okay, with the exception of last season where he missed those 14 games. In one of the most violent sports, if not the most violent sport there is, playing the quarterback position, this man has been durable for the most part. He's a former league MVP. He guided the team to the Super Bowl. He's earned over $100 million in his professional career. And despite what he accomplished and what he has achieved in his life, this man, Cam Newton, decides to be one of the sponsors for several teams for a camp you showed up to help you and the kids that were there with you. And you would disrespect him like that? I mean, is it really that important? This is what I'm talking about. Now, so we understand that kids are kids, and we understand that kids are entitled to make mistakes. That's why I'm not mentioning his name. And we get all of that. But the level of disrespect that young kids show to their elders is one of the problems that we have existing in today's world. The late, great John Chaney, the coach at Temple University basketball, Max, used to tell me all the time, he despised what he called the microwave society. Everything is about now. And everybody wants now so badly that they don't want to toil through the terrain and put in the work and grind and do all of those kind of things. And they'll do anything to get to that point, to expedite the process and bypass and go through whatever loops they need to go through to bypass the process. And this is one of the things that the guy did, because you're on camera and you're seen arguing with Cam Newton and everybody knows who you are. But you were disrespectful, and it was uncalled for, and believe it or not, very ungrateful, because Cam Newton did not have to be there. He did not have to be sponsoring these events, but he did it for you. He did it for kids like you. And obviously his coaches and other adults, along with his parents, got to him, and props to him for apologizing. But I do think it takes a little bit of looking in the mirror to ask yourself, what would get you to do that to begin with? Because those same parents were there, those same coaches were there. They taught you better than that. You knew better than that before you did it. You didn't care until somebody made you care. And that's a big problem that exists in our society today. And I think it's incredibly unfortunate that that kid was caught on camera acting that way. It's very unfortunate, but I'm glad he apologized.
Yeah, I feel sorry for kids nowadays. I feel sorry for kids growing up. You know, their brains are still developing. That's what the reason teenagers don't have good judgment is, because literally that part of their brain is not developed. I mean, most adults don't have perfect judgment. No one has perfect judgment.
It's true.
But especially kids. And especially in a competitive situation at that age, man, I'm glad there weren't camera phones around when I was that age, and I think most people, if you're honest, would admit the same. So I had the same reaction as you, Stephen A. It's so offensive, the kid's attitude, right? You're like, what's the matter with you? But then I caught myself. Stephen A., shame is not useful here. I don't think the kid should be shamed. I'm sure he already feels some kind of shame, and I don't think it's helpful. I want to read his apology before I get to he said, first and foremost, I want to express my deepest apologies to Cam Newton and my entire organization and coaches for my actions. I did not intend for it to get as far as I did. I'd like to start by saying my parents never taught me to treat people disrespectfully. Like, he knows he messed up, and he was caught messing up. And by the way, Cam Newton had the same reaction any human being would when they hear that. At first, you get defensive for a second. So he starts talking about, I'm rich. And then it occurred to him, and I don't want to blame Cam Newton for that either, because no one's perfect. And it occurred to him, oh, wait a minute, I'm talking to a kid. Okay. And then he says, he asked to speak to his parent. He doesn't even want to address him about it. He's like, I need to speak to your parent. That's the right thing to do. And then he pursued him afterwards saying, wait a minute. Well, people are looking at us because of what you did, but he's trying to figure out where the kid's coming from. I think it's an unfortunate situation. It could be a teaching moment, a learning moment. I think that these kind of interactions happen to everybody throughout the course of their lives, and that I really don't envy teenagers and kids today coming up in this environment where so many of their mistakes are recorded for posterity. And I would even say, Stephen A., that after that first moment that wasn't so great from Cam, where he just got defensive, human nature, he quickly recovered and realized, wait a minute, this is a kid, I'm a mentor, and he assumed that role. I don't see any reason for shame here.
Well, I disagree with you respectfully, only in this regard. I'm not saying we should shame the kid. I said he should be ashamed of himself. He should look in the mirror, in the privacy of his own thoughts, in his own head, in his own mind, even in his own home. You know better. And the point is that just like he's talking about his parents, the organization that he represents, etc. You know, basically what you're highlighting is that they taught you this. They taught you humility. They taught you sportsmanship. And they certainly taught you gratitude and appreciation for those who reach back to try to provide a helping hand. And for you to go at somebody that was literally there to help you. If Cam Newton never plays another football game, if he never does anything else in life in football, it doesn't take away from the reality that there are millions upon millions of kids aspiring to play the sport of football that can learn an awful lot from him. And that's the point that needs to be made.
Stephen A., real quick before we get out of here, may that be the worst thing that kid ever does. You know, we've all play the low light reel of anyone's life, the worst 20 moments. May that even make the top 20 for him. You know, we're all imperfect. We all mess up in ways that later on we're like, oh God, I don't even want to think about that. For this kid, that mess up is, you know, worldwide news. I feel bad for the kid right now.
But you're looking at the kid, and I'm asking you to take the bigger picture, to think about the millions of people who watch First Take, to think about the kids out there who will roll up on you in the street, who've rolled up on me in the street. That's the level of disrespect.
They can get your goat, too.
Excuse me, you know, wait a minute, respect your elders. There's a certain kind of way. Like if I saw my nephews or my daughters grow up and you know you talking to somebody that way, you're going to have a problem with Uncle Steve. You're going to have a problem with Daddy. Because guess what? You don't act that way. And so you're sending a message to the masses, not just for that kid, but for all of those kids out there. Stop looking for the elevator, take the stairs, be willing to work through the process, and be humble and respectful along the way, especially to those who are reaching back to give back to you.
Part of the teaching and learning process is being scolded at times. The kid deserved to be scolded. That's for sure.
No question. It's simple. You treat people the way you want to be treated, especially authority figure and someone trying to do favors for you. We'll leave it there, fellas. When we come back, the Nets have continued rolling with the win over the Clippers yesterday. So why is Max refusing to call them the best team in the NBA? Max will tell us. Plus, after Anthony Edwards' viral dunk this weekend, the fellas will debate which is the greatest in-game dunk of all time. Trust me, you don't want to miss that debate.
Season, these two teams. Leonard tries another three-pointer. That's good. Kawhi Leonard from downtown. Paul George, his three-pointer rattles in. LA now 5 of 6 from downtown to start. Harden step back. 3 is good. Harris running start. Nice feet ahead. And Kyrie Irving throws it down. Beverly finds George. George steps back. Three-pointer. It's good. Paul George from downtown. Irving steps back, three-pointer, in and out, won't go. Oh, and Jordan tips it in. The Brooklyn Nets come into L.A. and beat the Clippers and extend their winning streak to 6 in a row.
How about the Nets, fellas, going 5-0 on their West Coast road trip for those games without KD? Stephen A., did the Nets prove to you that they're the best team in the NBA?
To me, they have. To me, they have. I mean, I'm not ignoring what I'm seeing from the Utah Jazz, but I'm just not a believer in anybody outside of Donovan Mitchell at this particular moment in time, even though I love the defensive presence that both Rudy Gobert and Royce O'Neal has been giving them. Having said all of that, I look at the Los Angeles Lakers, and they were my favorites coming into the season because I assumed that Anthony Davis was healthy. It'd be one thing if he was just nicked and knacked and that was it. This is, you know, that calf injury. We're talking about an Achilles. Stuff sounds too similar to what KD, Kevin Durant, had to endure with him being out. It could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be 3 months. We just don't know at this particular moment in time, and we certainly don't know if he'll ever be 100%. Here's what I'm willing to tell you. There is not one single team in the NBA that can be less than 100% and beat the Brooklyn Nets. Not one. Nobody. I mean, their offense is just lethal. I'm calling them lethal weapon 3. But I got to tell you something. When I look at Kyrie and the level of unselfishness that he is playing with right now in terms of getting other dudes involved and some of the things that some of the baskets he set up for other teammates, I'm looking at the great point guard play of James Harden. I'm fantasizing about what they'll be once KD comes back, assuming he comes back healthy. And if KD comes back healthy, I don't see how anybody can beat them, because I don't think their defense is going to be as god-awful as it was earlier this season. And then not only that, I'm watching them get other people involved. TLC, Joe Harris, Jeff Green, and others. I'm watching them get other people involved, and I'm saying to myself, damn, you know what? Joe Harris is still getting some shots. Jeff Green is still getting some shots. TLC is still getting some shots. DeAndre Jordan has been a presence in the middle. We can't ignore it. Defensively, rebounding as well. I'm just looking at them potentially. And let me not forget Landry Shamet as well, who can shoot the rock. They can go 9 or 10 deep. And I look at it from that standpoint. Bruce Brown, can't forget about him either. I'm just looking at them and I'm saying, excuse me, who the hell's going to beat them? Because guess what? A lethal offense can make you tight once you're on offense, because you know you have to be close to perfect, because these guys are so unstoppable on the offensive end of the floor themselves. That can make you tight. That can alter and compromise what you're trying to do offensively as a result of it, and then you won't be as effective as you're supposed to be. Now, with the Clippers last night, minutes restriction. Listen, I love Ty Lue. He's a Coach of the Year candidate. I think he's doing a phenomenal job, and I'm very, very happy he got that job. But when he laughed at the reporter, because, you know, this incredulous look, because the reporter asked him about Paul George being out of the game. Look, man, minutes restrictions or not, you got to make sure Paul George is in the game around money time, particularly the way he was flowing last night. I thought that was a very legitimate question, and there was nothing to dismiss about that. But in the end, it didn't matter. The Brooklyn Nets are the best team in basketball at this particular moment in time. A month from now, 2 months from now, postseason time, we can revisit it. At this moment, the Brooklyn Nets are the best team in the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, if AD's not playing, I can't say the Lakers, right? But I'm assuming AD will play. They're taking precaution. They're going to be extremely careful with AD. And what I've seen from this Lakers team this season, when AD's on the floor, is basically a continuation of last season. They went wire to wire as the best team in the Western Conference. They gentlemen swept the entire Western Conference, 4-1, 4-1, 4, and then they didn't even get extended 7 games in the finals. Now, let's take that team, clearly the best team in basketball, right? Like, listen to those facts. Did they get better or worse in the offseason? They got better. And they're the only team, when AD is healthy, that is absolutely elite on both ends of the floor, offense and defense. Now, we agree about Brooklyn's offense. I keep saying it. If they're not already, they will certainly, clearly, and by far be the best offense of all time by the end of this season. Just want to mention, the best offense, according to efficiency numbers, right, of all time, occurred last season, the Dallas Mavericks, and they were a good team. And Porzingis got hurt in that Clippers series, but they didn't come close to winning a championship, because you also have to play defense. No team in the last 20 years has won a finals with a defense ranked under 11. And the Nets have been playing better defense. Harden's not wrong. He's like, we don't have to be amazing. We just have to be, middle of the pack. He's right about that. But if they are, what I see is a clash of the Titans in the finals, Lakers, Clippers. And by the way, the win against the Clippers, no Paul George at the end of that game. And I know I, more than anyone, have been saying he has to prove it in the playoffs, Paul George. He looks like a man on a mission to me so far to try to prove that in the playoffs. Like, he's heard the criticism and he wants to do something about it. Stephen A., he dropped, 12 points in 5 minutes in the fourth quarter? And one thing you and I definitely agree upon is, even if there's a minutes restriction, we don't have to be fanatical about it. If it's a game like that and a dude is hot and you need him for a couple minutes at the end of the game, going over your minutes restrictions by 90 seconds or 2 minutes ain't going to result in an injury, knock wood. It's not, I don't believe that. And I think that would have been the smart thing to do, but they didn't. And so the Nets won a game on a bad call, on an offensive foul that shouldn't have been called on Kawhi Leonard, and without Paul George on the floor. They squeaked by a Clippers squad that also poses its own threats. I'd say the Nets are probably going to come out of the East. I can't say if AD's healthy, they're the best team in the world right now.
Well, I can. The way that they're looking, they've beaten everybody that matters right in front of them. Utah Jazz have been on a torrid stretch, winning like 19 of the last 20 or 20 of their last 21 games. Well, one of those losses was to the Brooklyn Nets by 34. By 34. You know, they've beaten everybody in their path. Beaten both LA teams, beaten, Golden State, beaten Indiana, beat Boston. Anybody that stands in their way. And the better the team is, the better Brooklyn plays against them. It seems like the teams that have the best shot are the teams that are stinking up the joint because they might play down to the competition feeling they can take a night off or whatever. But they get up, they rise to the occasion. And I just can't say enough about what I'm seeing from Kyrie and James Harden. They've been absolutely sensational. And Kevin Durant is not a subtraction. He's not a minus in any way because this brother could put up 30 on 15 or 16 shots. That's how lethal Kevin Durant is. That's how efficient he is.
The fact that they're doing it without KD is the key because, when AD gets back, the Lakers are different. But my God, when KD gets back, and if he gets back as himself, he's also a defensive force. And this year, even when he hasn't been, he's at least accepted the assignment. Who's the other team's best perimeter player? Fine, I'll guard him. So, yes, I do think if the Nets are healthy, they're going to get out of the East. I believe that, especially the way they've been playing defense recently, although the Sixers will have something to say about it. Lakers, Nets is the finals we all want to see, and I'm not convinced at this moment that the Nets win that series.
All right, let's get to a team that used to know what it was like to be in the finals every year, and that would be the Warriors. So Draymond Green lost his cool, and it cost the Warriors the game with the Warriors up to 9.3 seconds left. Green picked up 2 technical fouls, was ejected for arguing the outcome of a jump ball. Then Terry Rozier hit an off-bounds jumper as time expired to give the Hornets a 102-100 win Saturday night. Here's
he crossed the line. That's the main thing. We love his passion and his energy, and we would not be the team we are without him. But that doesn't give him license to cross that line, and he knows that.
Max, do you have a problem with Draymond's ejection?
I do. I have a problem as it relates to Draymond, not the ejection. Let me explain. I always felt that the dynamic on the Warriors was a little bit off because Draymond's the heart and soul guy, and Draymond is a leader on that team. And Draymond's also the little bit of the crazy guy. I mean, to play defense the way he does, you got to be a little bit of that. And a lot of great teams have that guy with a little bit of a screw loose, right? And that guy can be a great contributor as Draymond is and a leader. But in the absence of another real alpha on the team that has that kind of personality, that could sometimes be a problem. I'll give you an example. In the Cavs comeback win against the Warriors at Oracle, don't forget, that was a 73-win team. But also don't forget, Draymond was the best player on the floor until late in that game. He was about to win Finals MVP. Steph wasn't getting it done. Draymond was. But Draymond was also the guy, Stephen A., who you point to and say that the Cavs were given a gift by the league. They were given a stimulus package, you called it, when Draymond was suspended because he had so many technical fouls till that point. But remember why Draymond was suspended. Not only all the techs up to that point, because you say, okay, fine, now you're up to that point. No more techs, Dre. We can't lose you for a game. LeBron goaded him. LeBron kept his foot out, remember, and kind of tripped him a little bit. And that triggered Draymond. And if you, Stephen A., point to that as the reason they lost, then that's not just LeBron goading them, because you can't get the other guy to behave a certain way. He's got to lose impulse control in that moment. I think about Dennis Rodman on the Bulls, Stephen A., who also has a little bit of a screw loose and was a great defensive player, a great player. And we saw it in The Last Dance. Dennis Rodman would fly off to Vegas in between finals games. And one year during the regular season, he was given 48 hours. Okay, go cut loose in Vegas and be back. And when he wasn't back, what happened? Michael Jordan got on a plane and went and got him because that was Jordan's team. He was the best player. He was the heart and soul. He was the unquestioned leader. What he said went. That's not the dynamic on this Warriors team exactly. And in the past, Draymond's indiscretion in that moment cost them, Stephen A., according to you, a championship. So when I hear Coach say he crossed the line, we love the energy, but he can't cross the line, alarm bells go off. Because in the past, he crossed the line and it cost them.
Well, I don't want to hear the example of the NBA Finals used because I think the ultimate incentive is that Golden State won that game. It was a game 4. They were about to close out Cleveland in game 5, and the NBA gave LeBron James a stimulus package that's unrivaled as far as I'm concerned and propelled them to a title because ultimately Bogut and Iguodala would get hurt in game 5. Iguodala was never the same in that series. He was a defensive wizard and it compromised their championship aspirations. That's my firm belief. I've never deviated from that, and I never will. Having said all of that, I do not disagree with you nor Steve Kerr with what you said. Draymond Green crossed the line. And the reason why he crossed the line is because you're up 2. Your technical gave them 2 free throws, okay? All right, you got a double tech and you got ejected from the game. You compromised the game and the outcome for the Golden State Warriors. You simply can't do that. And then it gets to a point where what Draymond is going to have to recognize is the fact that officiating, even with advanced technology, even with the instant replay, even with the challenges and all of that stuff, it's still a relatively subjective business. They can get very subjective, and it's got to the point where Draymond is going to get himself and his team in trouble if he doesn't dial it back just a touch. We all love his passion. I think he's a basketball savant. You sit back and you talk basketball with Draymond Green. He knows what the hell he's talking about. I mean, he really, really does. But that's part of the problem because he's so knowledgeable about the game of basketball and he knows it inside out. I've spoken to Tom Izzo about this, the great Tom Izzo, about this on several occasions, this coach at Michigan State. He knows, and Joe Lacob and other assistant coaches on the Golden State Warriors, they rave about the IQ of Draymond Green. Okay, well, here's the problem with that. Because you know so much and you're so knowledgeable and you can really pinpoint where the officiating has gone awry and it's gone wrong, you can't be quiet about it. You on top of them all the time. But they're human beings and they can get to a point where they're sick and tired of you behind. And as a result, they're looking for a quick whistle on you and it can compromise you. You being Draymond Green, you have to know that and you have to adjust. And I want to throw this at you, Max. When you brought up the Dennis Rodman thing with MJ, MJ was the unquestionable leader. Do you want me to tell you who I think gets let off the hook in all of this sometimes?
Steph.
I think it's Steph.
Yep, of course.
Because guess what? Let me tell you something right now. Even though Draymond Green loves and respects his teammates and all of that stuff, he ready to go to war for any of them. If you watch his behavior on the court, there's no one he reveres more than Steph Curry. None. Nobody. All right? And a lot of times, it's Draymond setting up those shots for Steph. Steph's phenomenal movement without the basketball and stuff like that. But it's Draymond giving him those passes, instinctually knowing where to get it to him and enforcing other dudes to get Steph the ball. If there is one person that can get into Draymond's ear and be like, yo, bro, we need you. We can't have you doing this, man. Come, let's be cool about this. Let's handle this accordingly. And talk to Draymond Green in a manner that Draymond Green is embracing and accepting of whatever guidance they throw in his direction. It would be Steph Curry.
That's what I'm saying.
Far more than Steve Kerr. Far more than Steve Kerr.
Stephen A., this is what I'm saying about the dynamic on that team. Like, now, look, I know Draymond and Dennis Rodman aren't exactly the same player.
Not at all.
But of course, and Draymond has more diverse, and on the court, Draymond had more diverse offensive skills. But could you imagine a final series with the Bulls up against it, and Dennis Rodman's about to be MVP of the finals with a Game 7 performance? It wouldn't have happened.
Never.
And right, of course, and when Rodman took a hideout for a second in Vegas, I mean, they went over this in The Last Dance. He's in the room with Carmen Electra, and she tells it from her point of view. And Michael Jordan busts in the room. He was coming back with Dennis Rodman.
Knocked on the door.
That is Michael Jordan, like, as the unquestioned alpha of that team. And I do think, you mentioned Steph by name, I do think that's the difference in the dynamic of this team. That Draymond is as much of a leader and a heart and soul guy as anyone on that team, including Steph. And by the way, in terms of his importance to the team, everyone talks Splash Brothers, respect to Klay Thompson, one of the all-time greats. But to me, if you had to boil that team down to 2 elements, not just Steph Curry. To me, the second element is Draymond. It's the pick and roll partner. It's the vocal leader. It's the defender. It's the guy who allows you to play 5 out.
Than that.
Those are the guys who he and Steph together revolutionized the game.
It's much more simpler than that. They love Steph Curry. It's impossible not to love him. One of the nicest guys you could ever meet in your life. They feared Jordan. Dennis Rodman didn't want to have to deal with Jordan. He won't have to deal with Jordan. The fact that Jordan didn't come to knock on his door to request him coming back. Jordan went to get him. Let's go.
This is what I mean.
You understand what I'm saying? They were there. Steph Curry, he is loved. Michael Jordan was feared.
So this is what I mean. In the absence of a Michael Jordan type on this Warriors team, we've already seen Draymond lose impulse control. LeBron goaded him into it, but he lost it. And as a result, missed a finals game.
Shouldn't have been ejected.
Well, okay, whatever, but he did lose control. And the fact of the matter is
he didn't get ejected that game. After the game, they sat and they counted against the previous transgressions.
Right. Okay, fine. You think LeBron wasn't aware of how many texts dude already,
Yeah, but LeBron stepped over him and put his you-know-what on his head, man.
No doubt. He was
you can't let that. The man rules alone should have had the officials leaving that alone. You can't do that.
That's my point. So
they knew Cleveland was about to get sent home in 5. That's what that was about.
Because Draymond is not playing with Michael Jordan, because he's not playing with someone like that, he has to rely on his own impulse control. So when you see Coach say he got out of line and it cost them, that's a real thing and a real concern.
Yeah, we hear you, Dr. Phil. We hear you loud and clear. But in the end, what it comes down to is this. In the end, if you're Draymond Green, that shouldn't have cost you back in the day. But this particular situation now, your reputation is preceding you, and you're going to get more quick whistles going forward. And you got to be mindful.
Who you, Oprah?
You got to be mindful of that, period. No, I just talk common sense. I speak real people. I don't speak above them. I speak to them. There's a difference. Might want to take notes. Just a thought.
Oh, I understand what's being said.
Right. Are we ready to carry on? I got some news for you, fellas, that I think you might want to react to. Obviously, the T-Wolves fired their head coach, Ryan Saunders. They hired Toronto Raptors assistant coach Chris Finch as a replacement. Stephen A., your thoughts on this move?
Listen, Chris Finch has been around for a long time. He was an assistant in Houston, started out his career as an assistant in Houston, the front office, Rojas in Minnesota. He was running Houston's operation right there. So obviously their relationship goes back a long way. I respect the fact that this man is given an opportunity. It's not like he didn't have any coaching experience whatsoever. But you know what I'm going to lament? I'm going to lament the fact that, clearly there's no Rooney rule or a Bud Selig rule in play or anything like that. So this is a guy that's on the bench in Toronto during the season and is being hired as the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. You understand? So relationships clearly matter because obviously not enough black folks have that relationship. In a league that's 75 to 80% black with a plethora of coaches, I'm looking at guys like Lionel Hollins and even Phil Handy with the Los Angeles. Every staff that Phil Handy ends up on, it seems they win a championship. What about him? I'm looking at Mike Brown in Golden State. What about him? I'm looking at Nate McMillan, who was a damn good head coach in Indiana. What about him? He's an assistant now. What about him? Melvin Gordon, what about him? The list goes on and on and on. I got a few names here. I see Sidney Lowe. I see Jacques Vaughn. I see Melvin Hunt. I see Mike Woodson. I see Tyrone Corbin. I see Tony Brown. I see Lionel Hollins, okay? I'm just looking at it and I'm saying you've got a whole bunch of black coaches that have been around for a long time, starving for an opportunity, a chance. And in the middle of the season, you get rid of Ryan Saunders. And you got a coach there already in play, okay? I'm just saying, damn. Listen, Kyrie. Credit to Kyrie Irving, Avery Bradley, and those boys who brought it up, who brought attention to the issue before play in the bubble, where something needed to be addressed about black coaches getting looked at in the National Basketball Association. I applaud them for that. They deserve kudos for that. I'm going to keep doing it. Again, I'm paying attention to the process. There doesn't seem to be a definitive process that's followed when it comes to hiring these white coaches and bypassing these black coaches. Steve Kerr has been on the record speaking against this, along with various others. It's a damn shame that in the year 2021, we still have to talk about the unfairness and the practices of all of this. But Chris Finch, I cannot knock the fact that he's getting this opportunity. It's not like he's somebody that hasn't been around or has not paid some dues. I wish him nothing but the best. I can't condemn them for it. I'm just saying damn to the black coaches out there. Can't catch or break whatsoever.
I applaud you for doing this every time a coaching hire is made. And it's
David
really
Vanderpool as well in Portland. You know, he's another. Another guy, David Vanderpool. Yes.
Sure, it's a tough position to be in because frequently the hire is a competent hire. It happens to be a white guy, right? But you have to take a step back and look at it like, you know, what are those artists call, Stephen A? They do the dots, you know, and then when you step back, you can see the picture. So each dot you put on, okay, that's plausible, that's plausible, that's plausible, and when you step back and see the picture, it's a very white picture. So I'm glad you bring it up, and I got your back. I second that notion.
I appreciate that, Max. By the way, I think Vanderpool's in Minnesota now. Yeah, I think he's right there. Right.
I'll say this. This is what I started thinking. Karl Anthony Towns is when healthy, a tremendous player. But they have not won in Minnesota. And at a certain point, you're going to have to win because there are very few Damian Lillards in the world who say, no matter what, I'm staying here. And even Lillard there was promise on the team. And I think every move you make in that franchise, if you really want to keep Karl Anthony Towns, you better be very careful. Get his input and try to put something around him that will entice him to stay. Because no matter what he says, people have a threshold for losing.
Max, I will say this real quick before we end this segment. Number one, Karl Anthony Towns does have to be on the court. I think over the last season and a half, he's only played like 45 games.
Right. And
we know he's been through a lot, and God bless him and his family with what COVID took from him in terms of losing his mama. My heart goes out to him. He's been through a lot, but he's got to get on the court. So that's going to help because he's a terrific player when he's on the court. The other thing that I wanted to mention is this. You know, when we point to these coaches and what have you, you know, people misconstrue what I said when I talked about white privilege and I talked about Steve Nash getting the job with the Brooklyn Nets. Steve Nash is doing a hell of a job. He deserves a lot of credit. Mike D'Antoni is a brilliant offensive mind, and he deserves a lot of credit for the help that he's given them. I've got no issues with it. My issue wasn't about Steve Nash. My issue was about the fact that he never coached on any level. And the job he inherits, his first job in the business, is coaching Kyrie and KD and ultimately James Harden arriving in a trade. Black folks don't get those opportunities. And I remember when I reported that on First Take, everybody tried to misconstrue, and there's been plenty of coaches that were black that were given jobs without any coaching experience. I never said that didn't happen with black coaches. What I said was you didn't see black coaches getting those kind of jobs. If there's anything to celebrate today is that the Minnesota Timberwolves stink. And the default position wasn't to give a black coach that job, which is on a track to nowhere for the immediate future, even though I got faith that they ultimately get this ship steered in the right direction. But let me see a black man with no coaching experience
Nash's case,
get a job with a contender in his first job, and then come talk to me.
In Nash's case, that seemed like a relationship thing. Like he had a good relationship with the stars.
It is. It is a relationship.
Do we have time to do the dunks? I want to do it. T-Wolves rookie Anthony Edwards unleashed one of the most unreal dunks you'll ever see on Friday. Wait for it. Oh, my goodness. All right, guys. That got us thinking, what's the best in-game dunk you've ever seen? Stephen A., you're up first.
I'm not going to use the word best. I'm just going to tell you my favorite. In the 80s, Dr. J, Julius Erving with the cradle before dunking over Michael Cooper. Look at this right here. Oh, Lord have mercy. That was something special, right? Look at that cradle right there. The steal and then going full court with the cradle at the old Spectrum in Philadelphia. That was something. And then Michael Cooper seeing, and then in mid-flight said, oh, damn, let me duck now. That was something that was spectacular. Here's Jordan against Mark Eaton. Look at this dunk right here. Oh, Lord have mercy. That wasn't the one, actually.
7'4".
There was a different one. Now, he's 7'4", but that wasn't the one I was talking about. There was another one from years earlier. I mean, when Jordan came flying from the left side and took off outside the paint and dunked on Mark Eaton. So that's
Stephen
two
A.
times he dunked
Stephen
on
A.
him. Go ahead, Matt.
This is just a photo, but Vince Carter jumping over Frederick Weiss in the Olympics. I know it's not an NBA game, but that was, you know, the Knicks drafted Frederick Weiss. I said, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? That was sick. And then my favorite of all time is John Stark's left-handed dunk over Horace Grant and Michael Jordan in the playoffs. Stephen A., they went up 2-0 to my recollection. I mean, that was it. They didn't win any more games, but you dunk on Jordan like that in the playoffs. But the most spectacular Vince, that was
Vince
ridiculous.
Carter.
Ridiculous.
There's several we could have picked for Vince Carter's archive. Several.
Yeah. The fans agree that it was Vince Carter, too. We asked everyone on social media. That was a lot of fun to end the show that way. Bye, guys. See you in the morning.